My name is Maxene VanDamme. I'm a zoo education graphic specialist at the Greenville Zoo in Greenville, South Carolina.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari.
Hello, and welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. Y'all, it is time for us to go on a little trip. We're taking a little bit of a journey. So for those of you who listen regularly to Zoo News, you know that earlier this year, I spent a little over a week in Florida, gigging down there and visiting a couple of facilities to, bring them to the podcast. Some really exciting stuff. But I don't remember if I said this on Zoo News or not, but I actually drove down and back to and from Florida, all the way from Buffalo, New York. And I hit up a couple of facilities on the way. And so today we are actually starting our Florida trip together, and we are going to be going to the Greenville Zoo in Greenville, South Carolina, to talk to an old friend who is now a new guest. I'm excited to introduce y'all to Maxene VanDamme, who is just an incredible keeper, an incredible educator, an incredible thinker, and a really cool person and good friend. So you'll get to hear about all of that from our discussion of philosophy and how it relates to the zoo, to just us discussing our friendship a little bit and all kinds of cool ambassador animals and all kinds of other really neat things. I will tell you, since I recorded this a couple months ago, I was going to do an interrupting John, but I'll just do it here. We talk about a giraffe that is pregnant. Well, the giraffe is no longer pregnant, and coincidentally, there's now a very young giraffe at the Greenville Zoo. I'm not sure if the two are related, but I thought it was an interesting fact that I would drop for y'all. Yes, I am a big goober. So I'm excited to bring you this interview, but first I'd like to remind y'all to make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you're following along on social media at Rossifari Pod on TikTok. If you want to support the pod, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. Oh, and by the way, if you're hearing the name Maxene VanDamme or even just Greenville Zoo and you're wondering, wait, haven't I heard this on the podcast before? I swear I have. Well, Maxene was actually my first episode of Conservation Tales guest. So you have heard her if you've listened to Conservation Tales, but not everybody is. So now you're going to get to know the person behind that episode as well. And I guess that's really it. So let's start our journey down to Florida together with my interview with Maxene VanDamme of the Greenville Zoo. I feel like you made that title up.
It was made for me. So yes and no a little bit. There's a lot of niches in education and arts and animal fields that need someone with a little bit of knowledge in each, and I know just enough to bring those together.
I feel like you're selling yourself a little bit short, but all right, we'll get into that. So, how did you get that title? Like, what was your journey to this place and this title that you made up?
Oh, well, I didn't come this direction from an education or even an arts perspective originally. I've been within the zoo field for about now 13 years. And I started from volunteering at zoos from a husbandry side, becoming a zookeeper, making my way up to be lead keeper. And then eventually someone said, you never stop talking about animals. There's actually an entire department at some zoos where that is the main deal. Have you thought about being in an animal education position? And then I said, nope, but I'll give it a go. I got here to Greenville and then realized that a lot of the education I'd like to do was involving media, visual communications, and a long time ago, I did get a degree in visual communications and art world that all of a sudden made a lot more sense in the context that I was working with animals. So I kind of married my two passions of communicating through visual means, or now today audio means, and my love for animals and conservation.
Nice. And I can vouch for the fact that you never stop talking about animals, which is something we have in common. So that's okay. But so we are friends. This is not our first time hanging out. And I always love that when we can get somebody who I've gotten to know in this world on the podcast. But so tell people where we first met.
We actually met at the Bright Zoo. I think it was 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
I was doing the math. And at that time, of course, I was a keeper who was working with a red panda. So it's not a mystery of how you interacted with me out of the other individuals at that facility. But I've worked both in private and AZA zoos in the past. And it's been great to kind of connect with you now from both places.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that was still very the podcast as we're recording this has not been out for 3 full years yet. So that was right towards the start of it all. And I remember going to Bright's Zoo and Sarah Glass, the AZA Red Panda SSP coordinator, recommended it and made the connection for me. And in her very Sarah Glass way, she sent an email connecting David and I and was like, "Hi, this is John. He has a podcast. You should be on it. Y'all play nice now." Which I will never forget that email. I was like, okay. And yeah, so I showed up to the zoo. And he was like, we're not specifically talking about the red panda today. We're going to talk about some other stuff, but I know that you like red pandas. So get on the cart and we're going to go hang out with the red panda. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he was like, "Maxene, take care of him," and just kind of shoved me at you is how it felt from my perspective, in a very nice way, of course.
To be fair, when you're a keeper or if you're an educator, you have to be ready to speak about animals and conservation at a drop of a hat and know your stuff. So I think I did maybe have a heads up of as in an hour that, hey, we may radio for you to go talk to someone. And I think that was the context. But that's how you have to be prepared at any time. So if I got the radio call right now, I'd still have to go and do my best to talk about the animals that I love and work with. Yeah.
And so what red panda was that?
That was Wayne. Yeah. He still has my heart. Don't tell the red pandas here.
And so let's talk about Wayne for a second, since you had something. Well, first of all, since he's a red panda, duh. But second of all, you had a bit of a special thing with Wayne on social media. So share with my guest about that. Not with my guest, with my listener. You're my guest. I did that backwards.
I can be both a guest and a listener. It's true.
True.
In the keeper world, that we work really hard at what we do. And a lot of times we forget to really enjoy those moments that are special. It's why we get into this industry, is our love for animals. And so as a lover of also Valentine's Day, it's been my tradition every year to create a love of our animals and love of our keepers video. It typically only goes between keeper circles as kind of a kudos to them, from the animals to them. But maybe my love for Wayne went beyond, and it did get a little bit further than I knew it would. But a romance dance video between the unrequited love between me and him. It was a fun experience, and I hope that it cheered my keepers up. It's sometimes, when you're working day in, day out, it's good to be reminded about some of the good times.
Yeah, no doubt. That's that was a very entertaining video. Yeah, it was really funny meeting Wayne and you and I talking, and I was like, we're really hitting it off. This is cool. We're friendly. She's nice. She's smart. And then I was like, oh yeah, and I don't get to interview her. But 3 years later at a different facility, here we are. And I would just like to confirm for anybody listening, one of the things that I find interesting talking to so many different keepers is that people have different skill sets. And you're really good at artistic expression, and you're really good at speaking. Folks, she's really bad at pool. we played some pool last night, and Maxene is really, really bad at pool. I just needed to put that out into the world.
To be fair, I was using a herding strategy that wasn't maybe the best for the predator that was with me on the table. But we learned a lot. And again, I think I was talking about animals the whole time. So
the whole time, including talking about literally, she was saying look, it's like a herding strategy. Instead of putting the balls in the hole, I'm hitting them so they're all together. And I was like, I'm going to win me some games of pool. So,
and I lost twice.
Yeah, but that was fun. But let's talk about where we currently are. So tell me about your position here.
So my position here is that I get to work with education animals. I get to take them out onto programs, if that is with classrooms, where kids are coming to the zoo for that more formal education component during a field trip. But my main work here is really through distance learning. So using technology in order to reach those that may not be as privileged to come to this zoo or any zoo or experience animals. The majority of my programs actually are in the Arctic Circle, where there are no trees. So one of the most amazing things I can do, even just a part of my programs and showing them animals, is to take my camera and to show them the window. And then they can see trees and see my native habitat and talk about, what it's like in a grasslands versus the Arctic or the tundra or the taiga. So it's a really enriching experience that, even though we are a very small zoo, we're a 1 mile loop, that our reach is way further than just Greenville. It has global impact. We do programs all over the world. So I'm very passionate about those programs where we do distance learning. And then also through the media. So then connecting the community with us through local news programs and through videos that then can make people engage that may not even know that there's a zoo right in their town, and where the work that the zoo does really reach.
First of all, that's awesome. But I'm also really curious about how the heck these random schools in random places like that happen to find a zoo in Greenville, South Carolina. That is, like you said, it's like a mile-long loop. This is not, the world famous San Diego Zoo, who feel the need to put world famous in front of San Diego Zoo when they talk about it. It is the locally slightly known Greenville Zoo, and growing, obviously, like you said. But how does that connection happen? That's amazing.
A lot of it is through community networking, and we use brokers. So we have two different groups for online learning that usually work with different museums, zoos, and basically informal learning institutions. So we use CILC and streamable learning. So those are platforms where one's webinar style. So I may be speaking to, this year so far, we have over 5,000 participants already, where they can then view it webinar style. So you're talking into the void, but with your animals. And then we have ones that are more interactive, one-on-one, and that is through programs like CLC. And there is a group called Connected North, and they're those ones that reach out to those kids in the Arctic Circle. So there's a lot of upkeep of these institutions and groups that connect many facilities to these underprivileged communities. And we're just one of many that is making a difference.
I had no idea that exists. I have done so many interviews at so many facilities, and I had no idea that exists. That's really cool.
The internet, there's a lot on there.
I've heard that. Mostly naughty stuff from what my mommy tells me. She has these little blockers on, so I can only see some things, but we
can talk about animal courtship. We do a Woo in the Zoo program in Valentine's time. So, we can always get you a subscription for one of them, and we'll tell you all about different courtships.
Nice. Maybe I'll have you back on in February so you can do that. That would be, we can do a Woo at the Zoo on Rossifari. So, that's really, really interesting. Now, so let's talk about some of the animals that you work with on this team, because we just went and spent time with all of them. I'm having a very good day, y'all. And let's share about some of the animals that we were just hanging out with.
So I'm in the education department here. So I get to work with the ambassador animals, and we have a very small but purposeful collection. So when we're thinking about ways that we're able to hit school standards, we have to have the right animals to teach about certain subjects, but we're also trying to have the opportunity to develop something that makes us stand apart. So we really try to connect our ambassador collection to why they exist here in South Carolina. So we have recently got sloths on board. I am a sloth maniac. So if my excitement is there, it's real. It's there's a big group of sloth lovers out there, and I'm one of them. And we also have an armadillo and other creatures.
No. You know how this podcast works. You listen. You don't get to say, we have sloths, blah, 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 and other stuff. Let's talk about these sloths. They were amazing. We got to hang out with sloths today. You don't just get to like blow by them. They're really cool animals. Tell people about them.
So we have two. We have a male and a female. We have Lila and we have Lincoln. They were actually named by some of our zoo camp participants that are also donors of the zoo with their family. So I love that there's that connection to conservation right in their own names and that support for us. But they are an animal that historically, you know, when they have to come out, fall asleep in the middle of their shifting. And that when we think about the way that we're moving, especially in AZA, to give animals choice, it's particularly difficult to give our sloths choice and how to measure that. And it's something that we have amazing keepers at the zoo who have really developed programs that allow them to choose to go onto program or not. So we actually have both of our sloths are able to choose to shift. They shift over 80% of the time and able to then go into our encounter space. And it has taken a lot of work, a lot of love for that work. So we have a keeper, Jessica, who's done an amazing job to make sure that we ensure that, you know, when we open our encounters, we expect there's going to be a very popular animal that we're still giving that welfare aspect a good amount of consideration and letting them to choose if they want to participate those days by going into a crate, having that communication to our guests that it may be a little while because they may fall asleep on the way in there, but that we have a great program that's developing that will allow for those remarkable encounters that are life-changing with these animals. And also give those animals that choice to choose or not.
Absolutely. And that's really important. And it's especially interesting with the two sloths because they come from different backgrounds. And yet the training has gotten to them to kind of the same place. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, our female was definitely the more outgoing one right from the get-go. Definitely was hand-reared, you know, reaching out. So we had with her the training challenge of extincting certain behaviors so that, you know, when she reaches out, she's not going to be reaching out a guest and maybe grabbing glasses or, you know, different materials off of our guest. Whereas our male definitely was a much more subdued, was much more like reserved. And what we've seen with him is that personal connection, that consistency with his training, and bond and trust building has had him really kind of come out that direction. So we've kind of done a different training method for each of them to meet in the middle. And now they are both shifting well. And they're doing really fantastic in such a short amount of time. It's been a year of training so far. We're about to get our encounters up and running, which may sound like a long time, but with sloths, it's actually so fast. So we're really proud of our team and the program that we're building here for those encounters.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I love the idea of like, you know, you have two of the same animal with the same training goals, but you have to set two completely different paths because you take the individual into account. And yeah, you did make me take a step back at one point to help extinct that behavior. We were becoming friends, but yeah.
I don't want to burst your bubble. She's friends with everyone.
Yeah, I'll take that. I wasn't saying we were becoming only friends. Oh, I'll take that. As long as I'm one of them, I'm happy.
Well, I appreciate your help in training a couple of our animals today. You were also able to help with one of our newest ambassadors, our tawny frogmouth, kind of become habituated to people that aren't just on our education and keeper team. So all the times where we're able to then expose our animals to different scenarios, different places, it's going to help them be better ambassadors.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the stick. I mean, the tawny frogmouth a little bit.
Yes. So we have a tawny frogmouth, our weird little nightjar down there. He was not an ambassador animal before coming to our ambassador animal program.
Whoops.
And he does go into that like, oh, I'm a camouflage stick. Occasionally he's become a branch a little bit more often. So that's progress. But that's where it does take our full team. So when we get here at the zoo, all of our educators, all of our keepers, we will make sure that we have bonding time that's put in there. And that bonding time right now, for some of us, looks like just standing there and talking to a stick. That is also a bird. And some of it is where that progression is then hand feeding them and just working on to see if this will become an ambassador animal. And we're in the unique position here that we are giving, again, that word choice, that this may be an animal that doesn't choose to become an ambassador, and then we'll find solutions for, the welfare of him. But we are giving all that nice and slow training protocol to give him the best opportunity. And we see with individuals, some do choose more, some do choose less, and it's not always species specific.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And while we were out there, we actually saw another bird. Well, you saw another bird, but I trust that it was there. I got photos, so I'm pretty sure it was there, but talk about that.
So we have a eastern screech owl whose name is Captain. She is a little bit of a diva at times. So when I first got here, it was where the only our keeper was able to have them step up, put jesses on, and work with them. So it was a challenge for me. Of course, I was like, all right, we're going to become friends. That did take about 6 months total to where she would then consistently choose to then step up, let me put jesses, and go out onto program with her. I made a lot of fumbles of she's not food motivated. So I was like, okay, well, that's not going to work. She would kind of become a little bit like flighty around me at first. And then I started to notice sometimes, I flipped my glasses onto the top of my head, that when I had my glasses off, she worked a lot better with me. So I did realize that. I think it was probably the reflection off those glasses. They have that lucidum tapetum, I got to have that eye shine. Probably was being affected by the glare of my glasses that I always had on my head. So as soon as I started to work with her, where consistently my glasses off, then she would come onto program. So when I do have her, I'm only slightly blind, but we work a lot better now because of that. And now we're trying to transfer those skills to the rest of our education team, which all wear glasses.
Yeah. It's a prerequisite if you're a nerd. So, so we went back there and I took my glasses off and then I was like, I think there's an owl up there. Pretty sure.
She gave you a little bit of that eastern screech sound,
A little bit. It was very, very cool experience. And then talk about our armadillo experience a little bit.
Oh, yes. I'll start with a name. So our armadillo originally arrived with the name Ben, and our vet tech said, no, it's not Ben. I don't know what we're going to name it, but it's not Ben. So for the first couple of months, he was not Ben. Then we... As a team, when keepers or educators get together, it's always dangerous in naming an animal. So we toyed with the idea as potato. We stuck on tater tot. We were a solid team in this. Our animal curator said, we're not naming that armadillo tater tot. So then we compromised and we went with Coco, a kid-friendly name. He can roll up. He looks like a coconut. Still a food item. But we had him then announced to the public as Coco. And then a week later, our animal curator comes in and says, yeah, tater tot's okay. So now he is lovingly called Coco Tot.
Coco Tot!
But he's an amazing animal to work with. He has so many adaptations and his personality really shines, as you were able to see.
Yes.
He makes fast friends.
Talk about the bumping and all of that and kind of your take on that. I thought that was very interesting.
Okay, so we were having a conversation about how animals perceive their space in their body. And an animal, of course, that doesn't have whiskers, we're kind of going off of what could be an adaptation to help with the fact that they bump everywhere. Why do they always try to fit somewhere they will not fit? And that persistence. And armadillos, they have what looks like a shell. It's called an osteoderm, and it's made out of that similar material as your fingernail. So my hypothesis, which has no studies behind it, this is complete conjecture to my findings here, and that when I am working, I'll occasionally hit my fingernails all the time on different substances. And it doesn't come a bother. It's only if they get squished. So I imagine that if they're bumping around, it's not hurting them. They're just figuring out their space the way that we would reach out with their hand. They're reaching out with their osteoderm. But also they have a big spot on their head where they have a blind spot. And so we do see when he kind of goes into any space, he starts to map it out. When he comes out to programs with kids, I'll actually have them sit with their knees to each other, crisscross applesauce, because he will map out where they're sitting and he will find any weak links. And if he does, he will then push through the crowd and then go into the corners and try to then find, leftover places where he assumes there will be bugs.
That makes sense. Yeah. Very cool. So one of the things that you were interested in is kind of the philosophy of zoos. And we've had a lot of really deep discussions about that kind of stuff. And I'm curious in particular what you maybe have learned or seen or think in the difference between being at private zoos and being at like an AZA facility.
I think that when it comes to AZA zoos, and the reason that I've returned to them after kind of a big stint in the middle of working with private zoos, is that there is a lot more conservation funding. There's a lot more ability for networking with a larger amount of facilities, and that global impact and reach is really that strong suit. Coming from private zoos, there were some things that I definitely benefited from working with them. Just from, there's a little bit different amount of animals for breeding, that they usually had larger off collection areas than the AZA zoos that I worked with. And were more focused in those directions. So I got to work more with hand rearing animals than I would maybe in an AZA facility. But that what I think is important with the idea of working with any organization is that we're able to share and inform each other. And so what I've really enjoyed about being a participant in AZA, coming from a private zoo background, is how welcoming that the community has been. I was able to go to some of our zoo conferences last month and Wheeling. I'm still riding on that wheel and feeling. I had to put it in there. But that being able to speak about my experiences from a very different context, where I think a lot of keepers may feel like they're outsiders from this, the AZA pillar. And that wasn't the experience that I had actually there. Everyone was welcoming. Everyone was willing to share their experiences, because overall, we're all working for animals. We're all working for conservation. So the differences between the two at the end of the day is a lot smaller than bigger. But I think that the reason that I really aligned myself where I am here is because of that larger conservation impact. But when it comes to individual care of keepers, keepers are keepers everywhere. They love what they do, and you have to have that love.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the next step for AZA facilities and like just the next level of growth?
I think it is to really bridge the gaps of perceptions of zoos in the media. I think that it is our biggest challenge, that there is a lot working against us. And the idea of not understanding the difference between animal rights and animal welfare is one thing. But I think the bigger message is that people do not understand the purpose of a zoo. And it's not the current collection even that they have. It's not the experience even that you're having on grounds. It's the fact that that experience helps it fund conservation work that is beyond the zoo that you go and visit. Those connections are important then to create that love of animals, love of nature, but it's the work that we do off zoo grounds that is the real purpose of a zoo to me. That if we don't have that next step, we're able then to take care of our animals, we're able to provide them welfare, we're able to have their basic needs, their complex needs. But we can't just think about our individuals anymore. We have to think about their species. And if we don't find ways to act immediately, we can't even in education. I'm really strong about adult education, because those generations that are being exposed to zoos at a young age now, by the time they grow up, they may not have the species we're talking about today to actually conserve. So finding ways to really make those connections between our animals and what we need to do for them in the wild. And it's a bigger challenge than can be answered easily. It's a difficult one. I'm hoping to be, find at least one tiny bit of the answer there and help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I definitely agree with you. I think, by the time this has come out, this will probably already exist. And if not, I'll just cut this. But I'm actually launching a third series of podcasts in Rossifari. So we'll have my interview episodes and we'll have zoo news. And then I'm not going to do this weekly, but I'm launching a occasional small episode, like a 10 to 15 minute thing, where I'm going to be connecting with different facilities and skipping all of the who are you and tell me about your animals here thing, and just talking about one conservation initiative that's happening behind the scenes at the facility that isn't getting enough attention yet. And my hope is that by keeping those episodes short and to the point, that facilities will share them more. And because I talk to a lot of people, both on mic, but also off at PR teams and stuff, where I say I'm very upfront with PR people. And I'm like, I love your content. I love this stuff, but also like I just did an interview and found out about a conservation thing that like I look for this stuff and I didn't know exists. How does the public not know that you're doing this incredible thing, whatever it may be? And so I'm trying to put more of a focus on that as a separate like podcast thing.
I think that's a wonderful idea. And it is surprising to me how much we hide the best of us. Mm-hmm. That when we're thinking about the work that we do, a lot of times we want to just tell the happy stories. The animal has been born. Yay. That it's an animal's birthday. Yay. But the real best of us is the work that we do that makes an impact. And it's usually more complex. So we have to find ways to make this digestible and make it where that we can understand the real impact and the real projects that are going on. And a lot of that is helping support people that are in your staff to be able to talk about these things. Because often, as you know and I know, we can talk a lot about it and we'll lose people in that way. We'll start talking jargon because we get so passionate. We'll start talking faster and faster and faster about this amazing thing that we're working on. Oh my gosh, this program. And then that common everyday person has totally tuned you out. And so finding ways to empower our staff to have better public speaking skills, to understand how to communicate the work that we do. So if you ever want to have me on there, I have about 10 projects that definitely need more spotlight.
Excellent. Yeah. So, okay. All right. I think we're very much on the same page about a lot of the philosophy stuff, which I always enjoy. We were blathering on a lot last night about this stuff. And I think that's very cool. And I think there is an up and coming group of people who are thinking more that way. I'm not saying that all older, keepers and stuff don't, but in my experience with the podcast, it seems to be a generational thing more than not. Although I will also tell you that like, Paul at Cincinnati does more conservation work and is more passionate about it than almost everybody I know. And, he's been there forever. Roughly, I think it should be called the Paul Cincinnati Zoo. But, it's not always that way, obviously. But I do think that the up and coming generation, and there are a lot of people that I talk to in this realm who want to see those kinds of changes. And I hope that we can facilitate some of that and like build more conversation about that. And that's, something I try to do with the podcast and connecting people and stuff.
To talk about philosophy just a little bit, if you think about what those earlier generations versus the generations that are coming now have experienced in not only the messaging, but seeing the impacts of things like climate change and habitat destruction and species loss. I think that it's much more present. It's no longer if we do this, maybe, we're going to be able to save them. It's if we need to act now. That I think there's a lot of pressure and the feeling of time differently with our younger generations. And kudos to them. Get out there, get it done and get it done now. Yes.
Yeah. I think the fact that the world is burning and it's so visible now helps with that. I mean, it's not a good thing, but at least it's a call to action.
Yes.
So, still not a good thing though. But so let's talk a little bit more about the zoo here in general, because we did a great job going through some of the ambassadors there. Even though it's a small ambassador collection, it's a good one. There are lots. We had lots of fun. But, to the average guest coming to the zoo and to people listening who might be considering a trip, we haven't told them anything they're going to see yet. So let's talk about some of the animals that you have here. And let's start off by telling me what your favorite collection animal here is. Don't you dare lie to me and say you don't have. Now, you can have a couple favorites.
I have a couple favorites. Okay. I won't lie. So if I'm looking at our South America section, we have two different areas. When you first come to Greenville, you're basically welcomed by the pampas grasslands. And when he is out, his name is Anton, and he's a giant anteater. And for those people that commonly come to the zoo, and we are a small city zoo, so we see a lot of members. We see a lot of people return. It's wonderful when you see him come out and you go, we finally got to see him. I'm a big lover of all packs and zenithers, so, definitely have to choose an anteater there. But I will say in our Africa section, we have a tortoise, an Aldabra named Bubba, and he is probably the most surprising when I say, okay, for your encounter, we need to go see the tortoise. And you'll kind of hear them hem and haw, like, oh yeah, sure. But we also want to see the giraffes. We also see, these other animals. And of course they're amazing, but Bubba steals the show at just hypothetically 61 years old. He really is interactive. He comes up, and I just see a big connection between people that normally wouldn't with reptiles. And, part of that is, the mammals, we have the facial muscles. We can then kind of anthropomorphize. Oh, they're smiling. And they maybe don't have that experience as much with a reptile. And it's a great opportunity to see people think about an animal in the way that they never would, give them some nick scratches, be able to touch their shell, and learn about them a bit more. So definitely the Africa session, Bubba has my heart completely. And then in our Asia section, we'll probably talk about them a little bit more. Asa and Neo, our red pandas, they came on to our zoo just a couple months after I arrived. So I feel like we've both seen a lot together. And I've got to talk about Miss Wendy. Wendy is our barred owl. She also got here around that same time, about 2 summers ago. And when she came here, it was a rough adjustment for her, and she kind of wasn't consistently eating. And so our amazing keeper staff and animal nutritionalist were challenged with figuring out what she would actually care to eat. And it found that they wanted really thinly sliced salmon. So, this is the bougiest of owls ever. So she basically snubbed everything. They were like preparing, does she want the mouse open this way? Like, let me try this. We'll put it in a different angle. And then they brought a plate of salmon. I imagine, she just wanted a charcuterie board. And then she started then to eat more consistently. And she has developed a really great bond with her keeper. And it's great to have them come in. We have a good connection between our education and our keeper staff that when they have their wins, they come in and they're like, you'll never believe what Wendy did today. And it's that excitement about that husbandry, that connection aspect. And just knowing that there's an owl that wanted a salmon plate makes me love her so much.
That's awesome. I also love that you're like me with the word favorite, where you're like, yes, I have a favorite. It's 37 things. It's not really what the word favorite means, but I have the same issue. So I hear that. What is it with this zoo having diva owls?
I'll just say that, Greenville attracts a certain type of owl. And I have a decent look at the owls that come out to visit them. There are some, we live right next to Cleveland Park where we're situated. So there's something that's also attracting other owls to meet our divas. So it's just an attitude thing here that we have. We're confident about it. Greenville's great for the zoo. We also have a great dining experience. So maybe they're just trying to advertise that as well.
I noticed that your head was bobbing as you were saying all of that. And I was like, you're kind of a diva owl too, aren't you?
No comment.
Awesome. So, we will be talking more panda stuff with their keepers later on. So that's a different thing. So we won't dive in too much right now on that. But what are some of the bigger draws that maybe aren't your favorites, but of course you still love because you love everything here. We know that.
We are so proud of our giraffes. We have Maasai giraffes, and we have recently announced, which we've been waiting to so badly, that we have a pregnant giraffe. Autumn will be having her 7th calf. Ooh. We definitely have a betting pool on when that baby is going to arrive. Ides of March. Keep our fingers crossed, everyone. But that they are our...
Isn't that tomorrow? That's tomorrow.
Yes, I know. Cross the fingers now. I'm serious. But that they are remarkable that we have them. We have a large group of people also that are invested from all around the world with our giraffe cam. So we have a lot of people who interact with us in relation to our giraffes, and that having the Maasai specifically in Greenville is incredible. Miles has some of the most genetic diversity in the captive population. So we do see that also their calves are able to go to other institutions that make a big difference for our SSP plans. And our last giraffe that left, her name was Providence, and then she went to Providence, Rhode Island.
Woo, yeah.
So we are very happy that our giraffes are able to connect with zoos all over the world, make an effect in conservation, start conversations, and that they're one that we see people linger at that deck. And we are super excited. We'll have a giraffe feeding deck this summer. So it's something we've been fundraising for and building towards for quite a long time. And then we're going to be able to make those really direct connections, those memorable experiences that make it so that people care about really protecting these animals in a different way that you would have if you were just looking at them in an exhibit.
Absolutely. And I love giraffe feeding because I've probably fed 100 giraffe at this point, and I still, every time it's so exciting. Like, it never gets old. I just saw Providence.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How's she doing?
She's doing very well. I was up at Roger Williams recently and in the giraffe house, and they were doing some training sessions. And so I actually got to see Providence, and they are working well with Providence, and everything is going very well. So, yeah.
She may not be an owl, but did you see the Diva style that she has?
I think it's just something at this zoo. I think maybe it's something you brought with you. I'm still not sure, but
we breed big personality.
I like it. That's really cool. What do you think about in general? So we have red pandas, we have giraffes, we have lions, we have, some really cool animals here.
Are we going to talk about one of my actual favorites? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We have Amur leopards, just the super rare, awesome, amazing, fantastic, successful breeding program that we've had with them. Amur leopards, we also work really closely with Wildcat Alliance. We do a lecture series that our vet does in conjunction with them. And we have currently our mother and son pair. So we have Jade, and then we have Jasper. We have had our female Anastasia go up to the Potawatomi Zoo. And so we're able to collaborate with other zoos for their SSP. And specifically, they're what I remembered most about the zoo from my very first visit. So I came to this zoo on a random trip in 2019, and I just so happened to walk upon the Amur leopard exhibit as they were doing a volunteer ultrasound.
Nice.
And I actually still have the video, and then later have pulled it up and been like, oh, look, these are now my coworkers. They're both still in the video. How crazy is that? But they had it so that Jade, was able to come into a station. They had a special vestibule that was built so that they could then actually directly show the ultrasound. They had it up on the screen, and then our vet was interpreting this for a group of people as they came to go and check on the development of her cubs. And then I got a job here, and then what do you know? Those cubs are right there. So it's like, I got to see you guys before, and now look at you guys. You're out there, and now you're at another zoo. You're fulfilling your program that you're going to be one of those animals that maybe saves the species. So we have an amazing Amur leopard collection.
That is so cool. And with all of those animals, with pandas and lions and giraffe and Amur leopards and stuff, this is a small zoo. Like, how do you go about selecting? And I know you don't personally do this, but like as the zoo, because I know you're passionate about it. Oh my gosh, guys, she's literally trying to jump on mic before I ask the dang question. But how do you figure out like what animals to have in your collection, and what is your philosophy behind that?
I will say that one of the benefits of this small zoo is that they do collaborate with us to think about ideas and collections planning. They let a lot of people participate in those conversations. And one of the things that we're really paying attention now is the SAFE program. And so it's one of our newest programs with AZA. And when we're thinking about our zoo, we have a remarkable amount of safe species. And so we would love to be, the zoo that puts SAFE in our programs on the map. So when I think about our collections planning, finding ways that we then tie the conservation that happens on the ground to the animals we have here, I can't think of a better program that marries that idea of purpose, conservation, and collections planning.
There's a tree kangaroo safe, right? I'm just putting that out into the world. There's a tree kangaroo safe.
After we collection plans my future to Mantua, we'll work on that.
Okay, fair. I can connect you with some Tamandua people and some tree kangaroo people. Just saying, these are two areas that I'm actually very heavily involved with my connections.
My animal curator is going to be so mad we talked.
But yeah, no, I'm just putting that out into the world. Tree kangaroo safe. They're very good. You want to talk about, all joking aside, you want to talk about an animal that not only is cute and adorable and people don't know, so they get really interested in, but then also has an incredible need for conservation. And I just turned my episode into a pitch for you guys getting a tree kangaroo. I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about this. But yeah, just something to think about. Yeah. Anyway.
I'll let the powers that be know.
Yeah, that's important. Just tell them John said, yeah. No, but so I think that's really cool. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And what, I know we were talking about your herb house, and it's going to be getting some revisions soon and stuff. Tell me about that.
So looking forward to how we connect with our guests and visitors. We're in a place right now where we're redoing all of our signage and our interpretive graphics. And that includes in one of the older buildings that is at our zoo, which is currently Ectopia and focuses on ectotherms. So what we're trying to do is to create visually stunning graphics that also then convey messages about the species. And then for our key species, create larger signage that you would be able to get information without the need only for language, so that we can be more inclusive. Having the ability to also see which of our species are safe, see which ones are part of an SSP program, so that when you come into the beginning of our zoo, you'll have a conservation corridor that connects with the rest of your 1 mile journey, and really connects time and time again through repetition. Oh, there's that logo again. Oh, that's that thing again. So you can really understand, again, that purpose behind our zoos, that purpose behind our collection. And while with signage, when we look historically, how many people really read the signs, that is a small percentage of visitors that go to the zoo beyond just figuring out, oh, that's what this thing is called. But when you eliminate just language and you start to look at bigger ideas of communicating through a visual sense, that's where you're going to have an impact without the need to read, that you can see the effects. And it's something that we're working on. We're still in the grounds. One for doing that writing, working with our education team. We have a great team of graphic designers, and we also have the power behind the city of Greenville itself. We're a municipal zoo. So that they're heavily involved with how we're going to be able to produce these signs, because we are a public resource and an educational resource.
Has there been much looking into the studies that have been done on the different kinds of signage and the efficacy of those and everything? Because I've actually done that for Project Dragonfly. I've been doing, that's kind of been my focus. So I'm curious how much thought has gone into it from that perspective.
I think that there's definitely where, me personally,
This is what you do in the evenings. Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
You play with cats and read signage. And,
I have a very busy social life. But I am very passionate about interpreting. And I think that there's a lot of people in this field, especially in education departments, through, even just our entire department is NAI certified, so that we are really thinking about.
What is that?
National Association of Interpreters.
Cool. Thank you.
That then we're caring about how we deliver our messages and finding the most effective way. And most of the studies that really hit me were the ones that the correlation of how a sign is presented, if it's read or not, directly impacts the way the public perceives welfare. And so if you come to a zoo that has great signage, great communication, you often will have a better feeling about the care that they give to those creatures. And so even if all information is lost, if we want to say, we love our animals, we take care of them, we're doing right by them, just having a sign makes a difference. And that feeling that they leave with, and if they leave with a good feeling, maybe they're going to then care, maybe they're going to then make actions that then lead to conservation efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. Yeah, I'm very intrigued by I've read a lot of studies about zoo signage at this point, and the numbers and the results are vastly different from study to study. Like, I read one study that said that like 60 to 80% of people read signage, and then other ones are like 12 to 15%. I did my own study at Cleveland Metro Park Zoo on just a couple of very specific signage things for a project, and I think I came up with 6 to 10%. Like, it was not good.
Which bush were you behind?
I was so the place that I was at in Cleveland, it's hard to explain, but I was actually like, I was kind of away from people. It was actually kind of cool. I was able to observe this whole room and not really be seen unless people specifically turned around and like saw me chilling there. And even then I was doing it all on my iPad. So it just kind of looked like I was like an idiot playing on his iPad instead of looking at tree kangaroos and koalas. Yeah, actually tree kangaroos got a lot more looks at the signage than koalas. Just saying. Tree kangaroos are a great animal to have at a zoo. Just putting that out into the world, just in case.
I'm sensing some bias.
Did you know that they have a safe program? I didn't know.
No, tell me more. But I will have to show you my window where I watch people if they interact with the sign or not.
Oh, nice. So you're a creeper too. That's awesome.
It's also to see when the field trips are coming. That's totally part of my job.
I think you can usually hear when the field trips are coming, to be fair. Awesome. Are there any conservation organizations that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Definitely our Wildcat Alliance. It's a big one that we support here. The Andean Flamingo Safe is one that we're heavily involved in. Hopefully we'll be getting involved in some other safe programs too soon. I'm just
like tree kangaroos? Sorry. I get, you know me, I get focused on things.
Maybe another small mammal that we have in our collection. But that we do so much work with so many organizations. And right now, I get to help out with our conservation grants. We have a Quarters for Conservation program. So hopefully I can make that list even longer with how we collaborate with different groups and actually give back.
Nice. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Do you want my worst or do you want my first?
Oh, I want your worst.
All right. So very early keeper, Riverbank Zoo and Gardens. I'm throwing shade.
You know, they have tree kangaroos.
Yes, they do. I got to be in Conservation Corridor with them. That's the only one I've interacted with before. But at the time that I was there, the Dark Ages, there was a gorilla named Patrick. And that was my first place that they put me to clean. And Patrick had gone on to some new medications to help with his liver. And it made him have very distinctively runny poop. And I know that I was coming into this facility originally as, you know, just a volunteer. But my Lord, they give you just a dustpan and a broom and a shovel and a rake. And I think I had to use every single tool to get this off of the surface. There was a different chemical bottle that I knew that I had to apply at some point, but I applied this like in stages. Like we were going down the levels of this excrement. And it was a great introduction for those who thought maybe zookeeping would just be playing with animals. I definitely learned quickly in that regard, but it's an experience I will never forget. And I'm really grateful that I was able to work with gorillas. However, I've never worked with them since.
All right, now your first one. I'm getting two.
Oh, as a person who loves animals, I've of course worked with animals in a pet capacity as well. So I'm not going to talk about my first. I'm going to talk about my first. Okay. So I got into this field via a pet store because that was a place when you were at the age of 15, 16, you're allowed to work with animals. And it was a pet store that had just opened in my town. Before they even opened the doors, I was right there like, I'm going to work with animals. Hi, hire me. And they said, okay, here you go. We just got ferrets. And so, you know, I was like, oh, how cute, how wonderful. And they had a vacuum as the way that you would like kind of vacuum up everything. And there are two switches on this vacuum. It's a shop vac. There's one that sucks in, which would make the poop go away. And there's one that sucks out. And yeah, I didn't click the right button. And so first day on the job, first day paid to work with animals, technically. Yeah, I put ferret poop all over me. Yeah.
And yet you're still here.
I'm still here. I've touched many a ferret poop since, just not a gorilla after that one time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Of course. I'm glad we've been able to connect. I'm excited to see where we'll next find each other and hopefully see where zoos and conservation are at that point too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, and there we go. That's my episode with Maxene VanDamme, at least my Rossifari episode. But again, a friendly reminder, if you haven't listened to the first episode of Conservation Tales, which is available in the Rossifari feed, it also features Maxene talking about the Quarters for Conservation initiative that they have at Greenville Zoo. There are additional episodes of Conservation Tales out there as well, and I really think they're worth checking out. It's a very different kind of little mini podcast, and I'm really proud of it. So make sure you're checking those out, as well as Zoo News, and of course, each week's Rossifari episode. I want to take a moment right now to say thank you to all of the patrons of the Rossifari podcast, especially my Red Panda level patrons, which are Laura Shank, Kristen Dickey, and Stephen Williamson. Y'all, all of my patrons keep this bad boy running smoothly and make trips like the one that we're embarking on together down to Florida and such a little bit easier to pull off. So thank you all so much for continuing to support the pod. And if you'd like to support the pod, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. You can start for as little as $3 a month, and every single patron gets access to some cool stuff, including occasional bonus audio. We even have a little short bit of bonus audio from this very interview right here. So consider being a patron and supporting the pod, and make sure that you're tuning into the other episodes that we do and just all the things. Be here, learn about zoos, go to zoos, support zoos, be awesome, do conservation work, help animals. Yay! I get excited. I like this community. What can I say? I know what I can say. The only other thing left to say, which is the word credits backwards is Steiderk.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari, or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.